Witches are always the weird women. Witches are always on the outskirts of society, and that is why they're persecuted. Adam was what came in between the animals and Eve, and as such, you have to remember that men are just as close to beasts as they are to women. Trust in nature and trust in yourself, because they are ultimately the same thing. Hi, thank you so much for clicking on my video. Welcome or welcome back to Lit Couture. My name is Kirsten, and today we are going to be finishing up our trio of witch videos. Happy almost Halloween, by the way. Today we are going to be talking about some feisty elder witches who are representing the crone. If you didn't know, true witches, like the actual practicing ones, separate the goddess they worship into three facets: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And the maiden, of course, is the young, innocent, beautiful, yet to learn anything witch. The mother, of course, is the nurturing, caring one who creates life, and the crone, well, she gets to be cranky because she's seen it all and she dishes out an awful lot of wisdom. As such, I will be taking each one of these books and distilling them down to the wisdom I think the crones in the book would bestow upon all of us at the end of their adventures. So let's get going. The first book that I chose was Weyward by Amelia Hart. This is the book that I chose to match today. Yeah, no, I definitely had to buy this corset, but I have no chill when it comes to Halloween, so there's no way this is not going to get used again. This was from my Spookopoli board, so I was very excited to read it. While it doesn't have a lot of actual crones in the book, we do get their wisdom through letters and through flashbacks, so I am going to count this one in my video. This one follows 3 timelines, and strangely enough, nearly all of the books about crones have an awful lot of main characters. I think probably because a main theme throughout all of this is, at the end of your life, forget men, you're gonna want sisterhood. Take that for what you will. I am happily married. Weyward follows a character in 1619 named Altha, and when we meet her, she's unfortunately being arrested for witchcraft and being thrown in jail. Not the greatest scenario for you. And then in 1942, we are following Violet, and yes, she's over in Europe during World War II. Also not the greatest situation. Her dad is kind of a total jerk, but her brother's pretty great, so that's awesome. And things are going semi-okay for her until her cousin Frederick shows up and seduces her. More on that later. And then we are following Kate in 2019, and the book opens with her in a very safe haven-esque way, showing her dressed in very form-fitting clothing and blonde dyed hair, because that's what her husband likes, and you don't want to anger her husband because there will be bruises afterwards. Yeah, trigger warnings all over the place in this book. Women have it rough, and that's probably why it was languishing on my shelves for so long. That's what I had heard about. So we follow these 3 women, and the reason the book is called Weyward is because all of them at one point or another live in the Weyward cottage, and they all come from the same bloodline. Now, basically, I have told you what the summary gives you. We follow Altha through her witch trial. We follow Violet through the war and dealing with the fact that she has no mother to help her get through her struggles growing up, and the fact that her mother was rumored to have been very strange and odd and to have gone mad before she died when Altha was a tiny baby. And we follow Kate, who flees to this cottage which is totally ramshackle and covered in vines, and basically nature has nearly taken over it. And we follow her try to get on her own feet and find her independence after years of being stifled with a husband who has just been horrible to her in England. That is all the summary tells you. As much as the book does follow some really brutal topics, the language in it is very gentle and nature-driven, and it softens it to where even someone like me who has trouble dealing with these topics a lot of the time could totally handle it in a way. And as much as these women learn to find comfort in nature and then eventually draw their power from nature, because yes, these women do have literal powers. I'm not going to keep that a secret, and I don't think the book keeps that a secret either. From that strength in nature, they find the strength in themselves. And as violent as men can be, nature has its own strength and its own brutality when it needs to protect itself and when it needs to protect its own. And I think that's a major theme in the book as well. I will say though, when you peel back this beautiful cottagecore cover and look a little bit closer, you will also see the symbolism and the double meanings in all of these beautiful plants. And plants can be poisonous. Plants can protect themselves if they need to, and so can a lot of birds and bugs, particularly in swarms. So it does start to get under your skin in a way as well. You want to be on the sides of the women in this book, I will tell you that much. If you have been afraid to pick this book up, check your trigger warnings, but know that it is delivered in a way that is much more gentle than you would expect, and justice is served. And I think that if the Weyward women were to give you any words of wisdom, they would be to trust in nature and trust in yourself, because they are ultimately the same thing. Next up, I read The Change by Kirsten Miller. I had been intimidated by this book for so long. I don't know why. I felt like it was going to be this big, massive feminist opus. You know what? It read like a domestic thriller with some like feminist themes and just a lot about female friendship. Don't be intimidated by this book, because you shouldn't be. I don't know where I was for all this time. This is about 3 main women. It starts about Nessa, whose husband has passed away and her kids have just gone off to college, so she's kind of like, I've got this lovely house, white picket fence, now what the frick do I do? And then we've got Harriet, who recently lost her job in the advertising world, most unjustly, might I add. She's like done with her husband. She's like, you know, it's your fault. We're working together, you're taking all the credit for everything I've done, and he is gone and off with his mistress and whatever. And she's like, also living in the same neighborhood and is also feeling quite lost. And we are also following Jo, who lives with her husband and their daughter Lucy. And I think she's the same age as the others, possibly not, but she is definitely going through menopause or perimenopause, because her hot flashes are intense. And by intense, I mean she can literally like touch someone and burn them, and they get her out of bed every single night and she has to go stand outside naked and watch the steam come off her body. So yeah, no, that counts as something a little magical. Eventually, we realize that Nessa also has magical powers. She can see ghosts. That runs in her family, and as it turns out, she discovers that power right around the time when she gets her first period, and then she gets to have children and watch them grow up, and then when she stops bleeding, she starts seeing ghosts again. Boy, the fun never stops when you're a woman. And then Harriet discovers, oh, gosh, you know what? I can do just about anything I want with plants and grow anything I want, even if they're freaking extinct. Wow, I'm really good at growing things that poison people and bring on bees, especially when bad people have allergies to them and things of that nature. So yeah, you know what? We've got a little accidental coven of witches right in suburbia and right next to a very, 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 very wealthy place where millionaires and billionaires live. Nothing can go wrong, right? Wrong, because one day Nessa hears her first ghost in a while, and it's of a girl, and then she realizes there's more girls in the ocean, and oh crap, there's a serial killer in their town, and boy, it looks like she's gonna need Jo's protection and Harriet's services for justice to make everything right. This really does read like a thriller. It's a mystery. It's a great mystery. I had so much fun reading it. I really couldn't put it down. It's an easy read. It's, well, I shouldn't say it's a fun read, but it does read like a thriller in many places. And it has a lot to say about our obsession with thrillers in a lot of ways, and even our obsession with true crime podcasts. I know that I listen to them on and off. Sometimes I can handle it, sometimes I can't. And I always wonder, why am I listening to this? Why am I watching these on YouTube? I love Kendall Ray and Bailey Sarian, and that's not something I would think I would listen to. And it kind of explains it in this book that, you know, women need to know what monsters are lurking in the dark, and sometimes maybe it makes us feel safer that we weren't the victims, whereas men can just watch it for entertainment because they're never the victims. Wow, that's a lot to say in a sentence, book. Thanks for that. This is very feminist in a lot of ways. One of the things that I love is that it says, women, we exist after we go through our beautiful stage and then our motherhood stage, our breeding stage, and we still have years of our life left. It's not like we just die after that, and we do have a purpose, and this book explains it beautifully. It says, you know what, we exist first to learn, then we exist to create, whether that's life or your life's work, whatever that is, and then we exist to put our experience to use and to protect those who are weaker. And that last part of your life can be one of incredible power. And as someone who is looking around at this point in my life and going, God, you know, I don't think I want to get older. Thank you very much. I'm starting to buy some anti-wrinkle cream and, like, you know, maybe Google Botox occasionally. It was very comforting to think about it in that way. We also see a very extreme sense of justice. It makes sense to a certain extent in this book, because in this book, men literally have all the power and are constantly taking it from women, and women have no way to fight back. We see them rewriting history, literally. We see them rewriting the present. We see them taking jobs and livelihoods. They have all the money, they have all the power, and women have the magic. And they do what they have to do to even the score, or at least make things as safe as they can for one another. And one thing that was incredible in this book was in one of the small flashbacks we see from one of the girls who unfortunately did not survive this story. We saw her mother telling her the story of Eve, only she said, you know what, I'm taking it one step further. It's not just that Adam was the rough draft. Adam was what came in between the animals and Eve, and as such, you have to remember that men are just as close to beasts as they are to women. They can't always control themselves. They don't have that same nurturing instinct. They have those violent instincts within them. You have to remember that when you're around men, those baser instincts are always going to be there and drive them forward. Also, that snake, if you eat an apple and you realize that you can go and see the world and learn everything there is to know and not just live naked in a garden your whole life, what are you gonna pick? You're gonna go learn more and see the whole world. Why is that a bad thing? And I love how the story of Eve was reframed in this book because it makes so much more sense that way to me. I'm not a religious person, but that's my new version of the Adam, Eve, and the apple story, let me tell you. I think that I have already kind of said the words of wisdom from this book. The last part of your life is not something you have to fear. Instead, it is a power to be harnessed. Use it to protect those who are weaker than you, even if that is just passing on what you have learned. Next, I finally read Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. And this is another one of those books where no one kind of tells you what it's about, and neither does the inside flap of the book. So super duper helpful, everyone. But I kind of understand why once I got involved, because every time you got a little further in the book, it felt like things were spoilers. So I'm not going to be much help either. Sorry, guys. Her Majesty's Royal Coven obviously is a coven of witches that is secret within the government of England, and only the super important people who need to know about this branch of the government are going to know about this branch of the government. And all witches in England do have to swear their allegiance to it when they hit a certain age. We are following 4 such witches. Currently, one of them, Helena, is the head of this. She is the current high priestess, which go Helena. We have Neve, who is like a magical vet, and she doesn't really want a whole lot to do if she can help it with the HMRC, but she's there if she needs to. You know, she's got her own thing going on. And at one point she does get called in because she is quite powerful and she's, you know, willing to do her part. We've got Leonie. She has a partner and has sort of branched off from the HMRC and has created her own coven for those who slip through the cracks, the minorities, those who are not basically straight, white, and rich, and this kind of really does not thrill Helena, so they are at odds, I will tell you that much. And then we've got Elle, who is a mom and just trying to raise her children. That's all she really wants with her husband. Those are her big goals in life right now. And you know what? Sometimes that's enough to keep you busy, particularly when your daughter is showing powers. Teenagers are probably fun enough without powers, I'm guessing. That is it in general. Life as a modern witch was never simple, but now it's about to get apocalyptic. A story of ancient prophecies, modern dating, of sacred sisterhood, and demonic frenemies. We do see Neve try and start dating. We do see a giant prophecy come that sets everything in the story in motion. But the really important thing that I will say is that all of these witches, they have grown children, or they are deciding, oh, do we want to have children? Are we too old to have children? Or they're just really quite old. They're past all that. So these are some amazing crones. They know their power, they have mastered their power, they're ready to pass on their knowledge, only it seems like, you know what, a major battle / prophecy is about to get in their way. I enjoyed this book so much. It was irreverent, it was of the time, it was very, very liberal, so if that is your kind of thing, you're going to enjoy it. And I just sat and was like, this is so refreshing, this is delightful, this is a breath of fresh air, this is what I need right now. I just lapped it up. I really, really did. We got to see all kinds of representation, and you know what? Witches are always the minority. Witches are always the weird women. Witches are always on the outskirts of society, and that is why they're persecuted. And they are the perfect place to bring in representation for all of the people who are currently still facing persecution. So I absolutely understand why that was done, and it was great. And I totally understand why older witches who have experienced and understand a legacy of persecution would be able to be the older people who can accept whatever whatever we're talking about that is currently up for debate, and maybe the older generations don't always understand. I think what was also great is this was such a fast read. It looks like kind of a hefty book, but this reads fast, it's fun, it's action-packed, you're never gonna be bored. It feels like there's a lot of characters, but they are all so unique that I never lost track of them. I had to pick this up and put this down for a while, and I was able to get right back into it without being confused, which I think says a lot. It really is a memorable read, and I definitely want to continue on with this series. And it really does show an awful lot of witchcraft, which is so much fun. So I would say the words of wisdom from the ladies in this book are, move on with the times, and know that the future is forever changing with each and every decision that we make. And don't let fear create self-fulfilling prophecies. How many times have we seen that? Didn't Shakespeare teach us that? Didn't the Greeks teach us that? No? Okay, just me. Next, we've got a book that I haven't heard a ton about, and I think maybe I know why that is. I only gave it 3 stars, but then I found out that it's just the first in a series, so I feel like maybe it's just getting started and I'm going to love the rest of it, and that is VenCo by Cherie de Moline. I feel like that's just the way I should say her name, so humor me. VenCo begs the question, what if covens functioned like MLMs? I was hooked from that pitch, let me tell you. I also was very amused to see the yellow birds on the front cover because I have been obsessed with the Salem Witch Trials. Tituba in the Salem Witch Trials originally talked about how the devil tempted her to commit her sins by offering her yellow birds, and witches are very famously known for being seen with yellow birds. They happen since the 1600s, so points for the cover on that one. But this book follows mostly Lucky St. James and her grandmother Stella. She did have a mother, Arnia, but sadly she passed away of cancer years and years ago. Stella is now kind of very senile, although she does have her lucid moments, and we love to see those. She lives in Toronto, and one very strange day, she finds basically a hole leading her through her apartment building to the building next door, and in it is a silver spoon that says Salem on it, and thus begins her adventure, leading her to realize she is part of a coven. Covens come in sevens, and it is her job to find the last member. And why it is like an MLM is because we have basically a physical representation of the goddess that I've been talking about this whole time, which was so cool to see. We have a maiden, a mother, and a crone, and they are sort of the head of all the witches in the world, and they're trying to find the United States Coven. Lucky St. James is lucky number 6, and she's looking for lucky number 7, and how it works is you have a certain amount of time to find each Coven member. Unfortunately, the last Coven member, you are down to a matter of days, whereas originally you had years to find like the second Coven member, so good luck to Lucky St. James. And her search leads her down to New Orleans, which is always an awesome place for witchy adventures, but unfortunately, she is being hunted this entire time by a man named J. Christos, who, while incredibly delicious apparently, because he just seduces everybody he comes across, he is what is known as a Benedicti, and they are ancient witch hunters who were originally hunted down and done off with the witches. He's like the last one, and he is trying to prevent her from completing their coven. VenCo is actually funded by dark money. They hide witches and all the places women gather, like Tupperware parties. We don't get to see that a ton in the book, which I'm really sad to say, but we do see all that dark money providing lots of money to help her find the last witch, and the beautiful mansion in which the other witches are waiting for her for when they all finally gather together if she can find and complete their coven. This, I would basically say, is one giant long prologue. It is a travel book. She's traveling, she's hunting, she's searching, she's being hunted the entire time, and she's bringing her grandmother with her. We also do get to meet all the other members of the Coven that are there so far, and we do see all of their stories and how they all became members of the Coven and found their little spoons, and it's wonderful. Probably the best part of the whole entire book is the representation of witchcraft. They talk about how when men burned witches, it was to eliminate all of the stories of witchcraft and the legacy of witchcraft that they were trying to pass down to one another, and of course they didn't succeed, and it pulls from all forms of magic, and they are all equally valid. We see indigenous magic, tarot magic, we see folk magic, all kinds of rites, we see scrying. All magic is real in this book, and all magic is true in this book. It just depends what part of the world you're in and what your traditions are. And I loved that. Nature is just all powerful, and essentially if you look at witchcraft, everything has its basis there, and it's just how you choose to use it. Honestly, that was where the strength in this book came in. Every time we met a new witch on Lucky's journey, we saw a different kind of magic, and that was just a delight. Words of wisdom. Beware MLMs. No, I'm just kidding. Trust your instincts and trust that magic is magic no matter what form it takes. Also, the best way to win a battle is simply to just keep going. Next, I picked up The Witches of Moonshyne Manor by Bianca Moraes, and this was a surprising delight. I just randomly found this, I think it was published this year, and I happened to pick it up, and I was very curious. I think it's what inspired this video to become a video, kind of, because it's following these octogenarian witches who are about to lose their mansion to these men in town who want to plow it down. They are the distillery in town. They have the only license to make alcohol in town, and create what is literally called Men's World. I'm not kidding. It's going to be like a club where only men can go, and they make all the alcohol, and that is that. And these octogenarian witches are like, no, except they owe a ton of money on their mortgage, so they have like 2 weeks to pay it all off, and no one in the town will give them loans because all the men, of course, the ones with power and can give them loans. Here is their problem. We have in this fantastic coven Queenie, who is totally the one in charge, and she's kind of this inventor and mixes magic with like all these weird inventions and is the one who is in charge of the distillery a lot. We've got Ruby, who's missing, and we don't know where she is, but they talk about her and keep saying she's coming back soon. Mystery there. We've got Jezebel, who is a seductress, in case her name didn't already tell you that. We have Ivy, who's the botanist witch, who mixes all of her magic in with all these plants and is great with potions. We've got Ursula, who's kind of like shy and into herself, but is also a clairvoyant and never trusts her freaking instincts, okay? When you read the tarot cards, just trust them. Please, for once. We've got Tabby, who's a total bookworm, and has this great crow named Widget, who is her familiar, and does a lot of talking for her. She's sort of like, will not leave the house, ever. And together, these witches are determined to solve all of their problems one way or another, and they don't know how they're gonna do it until a teenager, who happens to be the mayor's daughter, who's named after one of the evil judges in the Salem witch trials, by the way, Mayor Stofton, which I find hilarious, named Persephone, comes in and is like, hey, I'm gonna help you and make sure no one pulls the wool over anyone's eyes because I'm on TikTok and I'm totally gonna help you, and by the way, will you help teach me witchcraft? We love Persephone. Persephone is amazing. This is all about female friendship, and it just makes me realize the next generation, you know what? They're gonna do it all for us. Go Gen Alpha. No, this book was absolutely delightful. It reads very cozy. There's a lot about feminism and like gender identity and things like that, but there's also like a heist and really fun things like that as well. It's funny, it's fun, it's warm, it's heartwarming. I think this book flew under the radar for the most part. I really haven't seen a lot of people talking about it, but the magic is great because there are so many different kinds of witches. We really see a lot of different magic. We even see a guy attempting to come in and steal some of their thunder, and believe me, the witches are having none of that. And the mystery of Ruby and all that, that turns out to be a little emotional. It also turns out to be a great part of the story and really gives a great climax. I do recommend this. This was a wonderful Halloween read. You can't get more witchy than this. They're literally like dancing out in this amazing forest full of creatures that are under the influence of the witches themselves, with strange plants Ivy has influenced. So definitely consider picking this up if you want something witchy, a little cozy, with a little heist, a little mystery. This is a great one, and the octogenarian witches are fantastic and funny and feminist and everything I was hoping for. If these women are going to give you any advice, it is when you have something important and you need to hide it away somewhere secret, write down where you put it. It is great advice. I wish I would listen to it occasionally. Finally, I read Circe by Madeline Miller. I listened to this mostly. This was a Spookopoly book, and the entire time I was listening to this book, I was just waiting to bawl my eyes out. I was terrified the entire time. It was just gonna rip my heart to shreds. When I had listened to Song of Achilles, I knew how that story went, and I did not know how Circe went, and I was absolutely terrified. And I did cry, and it hurt in a way I wasn't expecting, just like the end of Song of Achilles. So thank you, Madeline Miller, because God, it was 5 stars, okay? It was 5 really big stars, or 5 really big witches hats for this video, I guess. So what is Circe about? Circe is about Circe. Circe is the daughter of Helios, the sun god, and she's essentially a nymph, but she's a little different from her brothers and sisters, and it turns out that she is a witch, and she really angers Zeus and gets banished to an island for all of her days. And for her, this turns out not to be so bad, because she has the voice of a human and isn't as beautiful as the other nymphs, and she is sick to death of being made fun of up in the clouds. So getting stuck on an island isn't the worst. She befriends the lionesses and the wolves, and she learns witchcraft and has a beautiful garden, and it's not too bad, although it turns out, you know, not knowing how to protect yourself when ships of men show up on your island isn't always the greatest, if you take my meaning. So she learns how to turn men into pigs. That's really fun. And what's hilarious is she says that men should be great pigs because they have many of the same attributes, but turns out men suck as pigs because of their egos. Shocking, I know. I loved that. But eventually Odysseus shows up and they become lovers for a little while before he returns to Penelope, and she's the one who tells them how to safely get back to Penelope. And when he's there, she does become pregnant with her son, Telegonus, and eventually when Odysseus does die, Penelope and her son go to the island. Along the way, she had fallen in love with Daedalus and mourned for him and Icarus. She met Medea, who is her niece. We see so many amazing people in the Greek pantheon, not just of gods, but of mythology. And the entire time, the whole theme was, yes, of witchcraft, but it was of loneliness, because you would just hear, and months later, this person showed up. And months later, they left me, and then months later, someone else showed up. And eternity is a goddess, when you are alone, I think would wear on anyone. And I think that's where the heartbreak truly came in. And yes, she eventually had a son, but he was mortal. And yes, she had many friends, but anyone who came to her island was mortal. And the witchcraft was interesting, and the language was beautiful, and the narration was incredible. I don't think I'll ever be able to listen to whoever the narrator was narrate another story, but it was the repetition of her loss and her loneliness that slowly broke your heart throughout the entire book. It wasn't one event, and I was not expecting the slow tearing out of my heart to such an incredible extent, because she would live forever, thousands of years. She's the crone of crones in this video, and at the end, that's what she realizes too. So her words of wisdom: time is really precious, no matter how much of it you have. It is the time that you spend with your loved ones that is fleeting, and cherish it because you never know how much you have. This one hurt a little. So that's the of all the books, this is the one that is going to stick with me, and the one that the writing just, it broke me, but it was so beautiful that I can't regret reading one or listening to one word of it. So, well done, Madeline Miller. You are amazing. That sums up all my crones and my maidens and mothers as well. I hope you enjoyed my little witch trilogy video. Happy Halloween to all of you. I hope you had some great spooky season reads. I would love it so much if you would like and subscribe, and please leave me in the comments what's your being for Halloween, or what your favorite spooky season read has been. I love reading all of your comments and replying to every single one of them, and every single one of my subscribers. You all mean so much to me. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm starting to getting to know some of you who comment often. So happy Halloween. I'll let you get back to your book. Believe it or not, I still have more October reads to get to. Sugapoly kicked my butt this year. Bye.